Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. And Tom, how's it going?
I'm so confused by the inflection in your voice there. Like, are you unclear on who I am? Are you unclear on whether you're always here with me? What was the reason for the uncertainty there?
Well, the inflection was there, and then I did not continue the intro as I normally do, so I feel like this show is going to be very, very good.
Well, it's as you said, as always, so there you go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And today's shows, as you probably know by reading the title, is one of these things that you could just talk about amongst your friends and amongst football fans, but it's something I saw on Twitter a few days back, and it was just name 3 players from your team's history that you'd like to bring back for the 2023 season. I posted that on the message board, on the Buckeye Huddle message board. There's a bunch of responses, obviously, but I also thought, you know what, this is a pretty easy podcast topic that we can talk about, and there will be some arguing, maybe. There will be certainly some 100% agreement on at least one player.
Orlando Pace.
Get that out of the way. That's the free space for, and I would say like 94% of the responders put Orlando Pace. And if I threw this out on Twitter and anybody who didn't say Orlando Pace, are probably because they're like 26 years old. And you know, Orlando who? It would be like, you know, back in our day, somebody saying John Hanna, or like, who? Like
John Hicks?
Who's John Hicks and who's the Hanna?
I think he played for I believe he was a guard for the New England Patriots. I don't remember where he played college football, but yes, he was.
That's what I'm saying. That's how old Orlando Pace is to these kids today, and it's wrong.
Yes. Next up, their hip hop and their baggy jeans. Kids? No. I think Orlando Pace is a fantastic first answer on this one because, number one, he's literally Orlando Pace. And number 2, what is Ohio State's biggest position of need this year? I mean, it's certainly one of the tackle spots. And if you, no disrespect to Josh Fryer, but if you have a 1996 Orlando Pace and Josh Fryer or Zen Michalski or Josh Simmons or Taker Chipola, I am probably going to be rolling with 1996 Orlando Pace.
Honestly, you could have Paris Johnson on this team last year, and I think you're still going to be making a good decision by having Orlando Pace as your left tackle. Is it gratuitous? Is it unnecessary? I think it's always a good idea. I mean, Paris Johnson, we know he can play on the right side, but this is where some of the discussion comes in. Do you go with the absolute best player, or do you go for the biggest need? And the Orlando Pace fits because it is both. It is both one of your biggest needs and also the greatest college football player of all time, without question. I don't think anybody doubts that.
He certainly is. I mean, I have heard you voice and Antoine Winfield related thoughts earlier, so I think he's probably, just in terms of absolute sheer dominance at a position, he's right up there with just about anyone. And yeah, I mean, this is the perfect overlap of incredibly dominant player and position of significant need. I mean, you can have, you're not going to hear us say the names Archie Griffin or Eddie George on this show because while incredibly great players who won the Heisman Trophy, in some cases twice, that's not really a position of need for Ohio State this year. So, that's there could be lots of great players who you don't necessarily are not probably at the top of the list of where you'd put someone. Because to me, I mean, I don't know how you looked at this, but to me, it's just, what is the biggest potential area of upgrade? Where are you going from the current level to the new level is the biggest gap, not necessarily, who is the greatest player, who is it's the biggest gap between what's there now and what could be there.
I think that's one way of doing it, and it's a good way of doing it. But also, there are other things that I would like to see or be able to see, and I will say, for instance, and this is probably not on my list of my top 3, but Antoine Winfield as the nickel in this defense, because he could fluctuate from nickel to outside linebacker as a 5'9", 182-pound guy, blitzing. He would do whatever you need, and I think that would be an interesting position for him to play. And I think with the corners that they have right now, I think they're okay. And I'm not even sure there's a problem with nickel per se, but I just like the idea of Antoine Winfield in that role. But I'm not going with him as one of my three. I just wanted to throw that one out there because that's interesting to me.
Yeah, for sure. And, you can pick anyone you want from, you want to throw Malcolm Jenkins on this team? Yes, that's an upgrade. You want to throw Sean Springs on this team? Yes, that's an upgrade. You want to throw, I don't know. I mean, Jack Tatum on this team? That's probably an upgrade. You want to throw Malik Hooker on this team? That's an upgrade. And Malik Hooker, I think, is a viable option. We'll get to the safety spot later. That's probably not a great example, but the corners, I think they're solid enough at corner where maybe last year that would have been one of the first names you said. You might have said Sean Springs and Antoine Winfield last year. This year, that's not necessarily as much of a concern, so you're probably not getting there. What's interesting is this feels like a very solid Ohio State team all around, and I still came up with like 5 or 6 different names and spots that I was like, oh yeah, that would be good. That would be a significant upgrade. Oh yeah, that would be a significant upgrade. And you can only pick 3. You cannot wish for more wishes, Tony.
And you could legitimately pick 3 guys on the offensive line. And, I just on the thread, I've seen Corey Stringer, I've seen Taylor Decker, Nick Mangold, I've seen Billy Price. I think center is an interesting one, but I feel like even if Carson Hinzman isn't the guy, they could put Matt Jones there and he would be the guy. So for my second, and this may be completely different than yours, and I don't know if it's necessary, but I'd feel a lot better. I'd feel good, and I'd say Justin Fields, who I think is the best quarterback in Ohio State football history, can run, can throw, can do whatever you want him to do, and always does it. Is tough, plays hurt, will do whatever it takes. And I fully expect Kyle McCord and Devin Brown to be very, very good. But if you're asking me for one quarterback for one season, go ahead and give me Justin Fields.
And that's one where I put together 5 different versions of that list, and he was probably on 3 of them because I agree. And I saw CJ Stroud was a very popular answer on our board, and I think that's a totally viable choice as well. Fields gives you a little more of the scrambling and escapability, and depending on if you're going to upgrade the other tackle spot, that may or may not be more, or that may be more or less important. If you upgrade the other tackle spot, then maybe it's not as important to have such a mobile quarterback, but yeah, I think that's a very good choice. Like I said, he's probably on maybe half of the possible combinations of lists that I put together. Orlando Pace was the only one who was a unanimous selection. After that, it gets a little more, dicey, iffy. There's a bunch of defensible choices there. My second one, and I think I'm going to go tackle on the other one as well. Because, if you put, and frankly, it almost doesn't matter. You want to put Corey Stringer over there, that's fine. You want to put Taylor Decker over there, that's fine. You want to put Paris Johnson over there, that's fine. You can kind of take your pick of whichever former first round Ohio State offensive tackle you want. And, Orlando Pace is Orlando Pace, and then there's kind of another tier of guys who are like, man, that guy would be a really good addition. You put those 2 guys there, and either center works itself out with Carson Hinzman, or center works it out with Matt Jones, and you put Enoch Vamahi in there, or whatever. If I have Orlando Pace and Corey Stringer as my tackles, or Orlando Pace and Taylor Decker as my tackles, I will take my chances with my ability to run the ball. I will take my chances with my ability to have my quarterback have a lot of time in the pocket.
Give me Orlando Pace and Darryl Baldwin, at that point. And that gives you the freedom to put maybe Josh Fryer at guard or something. If you're putting Matt Jones at center, we're throwing around a lot of ifs and buts. I don't know if you saw this, but so this weekend I went to the UA Next camp in Obetz and saw a bunch of the 2024 Ohio State commits and some 2025 prospects. Saw Deontay and Devontae Armstrong, the twin 2024 offensive lineman. And so I was writing about it in What I Know, What I Think, What I Wonder. And I wondered what it would be like if Orlando Pace also had a twin brother back in the day. Say and I wrote it like as Orlando and say Roger Pace, basically like a left tackle and a left guard, or, if they would be bookends. But just imagine if Orlando Pace had a twin, what that could do to your offensive line, assuming he wasn't, say Roger Pace is like a 285-pound fullback. And sorry, Nikki Sualua, but you're going to have to wait. Unless Nikki Sualua then becomes a tailback.
How did you not go with Kissimmee Pace as his twin brother's name? Come on, Tampa Pace. Like, there's so many good choices there. If you can give me, listen, hypothetically, if we can just run Orlando Pace through the cloning machine here twice, and those would be my three choices, I will take my chances with those. Can Orlando Pace play center? I don't know. Let's find out. Like, that's fine with me. Let's do that. Yeah, I think if you upgrade both of those tackle spots, like you say, kick Josh Fryer inside the guard. He looked perfectly capable at guard last year. Enoch Vamahi we've seen Enoch Vamahi play. I think he'd be fine at guard if you want to move Matt Jones to center. And they may have the solution at center with Carson Hinsman or Jacob James and be totally fine there, but it certainly gives you more options, more different opportunities to sort of shuffle things around and make something work. And like I said, if you are a defensive lineman, how are you feeling about the offensive line with those two guys at the with Orlando Pace and fill in the blank former first round pick as your tackles across the line for you? Because if it's me, I'm not feeling great.
Yeah, and as I think I've mentioned here several times over the years, back in the day when Orlando Pace is against Iowa, and Hayden Fry at times wouldn't even put a defensive end on that side of the field. Like, he's just like, you know what? It's a waste. It's a waste of a rep. Let's put that guy somewhere else and worry about, the alignment at that point. Because if you don't give Orlando Pace anybody to block, hey, it's a win, I guess.
Do you remember the 1994 season where the Buckeyes would occasionally play tackles over and have Pace and Corey Stringer on the same side of the line? And it was just like, okay, the ball is going here. We're going to be running the ball right here. Hey, it's going to be right here. You ready? Go ahead. Send your people. Go ahead. Yeah, it's coming here. And just Justin Fry talked about, when everyone in the stadium knows it's 3rd and 1 and we've got to be able to pick it up. That was the actual real life equivalent of everyone knows what we're doing and it's going to work anyway.
Yeah, and Orlando Pace would also play some goal line defense at times as well. My Justin Fields as a quarterback is kind of this super dynamic, just the best there is, a complete impact player. Defensively, we saw what Chase Young did. He can change an entire defense. He can make it work, and I think he's very instrumental in making Jeff Hafley's defense work. I saw people mentioning Big Daddy Dan Wilkinson, another guy that could just completely disrupt a game. But those are two guys, while I think there's completely solid choices, you feel like they've got good enough stuff there on the defensive line to where they wouldn't be needed. But if you give me an opportunity to watch Big Daddy and Mike Hall play next to each other.
Yeah. I think going back to the early 90s, I remember reading an article in Sports Illustrated in 1993 where John Cooper's like openly lamenting the fact that they redshirted Dan Wilkinson. He's like, I think we all know he's not going to be around here for 2 more years. So you kind of got robbed of a year of Dan Wilkinson. So 1 more year of Big Daddy. And for all you kids out there who may be too young to remember, Dan Wilkinson went 1-1 in the draft to the Bengals. That's how dominant he was. He was, kind of the early 90s version of Jalen Carter, but with a better motor, maybe. It was, he was just an absolutely dominant run stopper. He was an absolutely, it was just kind of like, nope, you can't, you can put, you can do a lot of stuff with the football, but you don't want to go here because this guy is going to be pushing your offensive lineman or linemen into the backfield on virtually every play. So, yeah, he's someone I considered. Chase Young, I think, Chase Young, or take your pick of a Bosa brother. We have seen how dominant a defensive, a pass rush can be and how much of a difference that can make. So I think those are great choices. But in the end, I think I'm comfortable enough with the defensive ends that I think they're okay. I think you've got good choices there. Tony, what is it that drives a Jim Knowles defense?
Tom, if you are going to pick the same player that I am going to pick, and I don't know if you are, but it is a safety-driven defense.
Is it now? Okay, well, so with the safety position being an important one, and the opportunity to maybe put someone and as turnover-driven as Jim Knowles would like the defense to be, and with the fact that they didn't necessarily force a ton of interceptions last year, I'm going to say give me Malik Hooker playing center field, and let's I'll take my chances with the defensive line that's still probably pretty darn good.
You are 100% correct. That was my third as well. I didn't think we would necessarily agree, because I think Malik Hooker, a one-season superstar, gets forgotten at times, but I would put his one individual season up against anybody else in Ohio State history. And maybe Chase Young is the only guy that can really compare to what I think 7 interceptions, 3 of them taken back for a pick 6, 1 of them called back because of a block in the back, a dynamic, a very good tackler, and the absolutely most amazing playmaker in big games, interception against Michigan, even interceptions in the spring game against JT Barrett. Like he was just making plays, and we'd started to hear about him more and more. And in that 2016 defense, he was amazing, and he should have won every single award there was. And you put Malik Hooker in this defense, and I think everybody feels a whole lot better. And that's not necessarily a statement on Lathan Ransom or Josh Proctor. That's just a statement on Malik Hooker. And I know it didn't work out for him in Indianapolis. He's doing okay in Dallas. Don't let that cloud of anything, because he was perfect, essentially perfect at Ohio State. And if you put him at free safety in this defense, even though it's not a single high defense, make it one. Just let him cover the entire thing.
Yeah, he's, I think, someone who just kind of lets you do so many other things, because it's just, and frankly, you want to put Jordan Fuller back there just in terms of, there is not going to be a problem. There's not going to be a mistake back there. It's just, you could put him back there too. But yeah, Malik Hooker, just in terms of sheer playmaking, there are 4 players all time that have more interceptions in a season than him. Mike Sensabaugh, Craig Cassidy, Neil Colsey, and Mike Sensabaugh again. I think Mike Sensabaugh would be I'm sure a lot of the older members of the audience are probably yelling Mike Sensabaugh, and I think that's a perfectly viable option. We mentioned John Hicks earlier. We mentioned Jim Parker earlier. I think we mentioned Jim Parker earlier, but
I tried to. I said John Hanna.
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of older guys who I think you give them access to 2023 level training and nutrition and all that kind of stuff, and they're probably good options there as well. But yeah, if you give me that kind of just playmaking in the secondary. That's a guy who's going to win you a game. That's just, at some point there will be a game that goes from a loss to a win because of something Malik Hooker does. Can I give you my most off the board answer?
Sure.
Mike Nugent.
Oh, too soon, Tom. Too soon. Or too late.
There's a little from column A, but the kicking spot is probably gonna be okay. There's enough options there that it's probably going to be okay. But man, I have never felt more confident that someone was going to hit a kick than Mike Nugent during pretty much the last 3 years of his career. Yes. It was just automatic. I thought about Cam Johnston, but I'm like, well, they already have an Australian punter, so you really can't upgrade from an Australian punter. Even if it's another Australian punter you're upgrading to. So yeah, I think Nugent is, like, he's not going to be one of your 3, and I don't think he's going to be, I don't think anyone would probably pick him. I don't think I saw his name on the board, but he was one that I thought, if you were going to go offense, defense, special teams, I'd think about him. And if we're going to do returners, just return only, give me a Theodore Ginn. I think that would be, I think that's a viable option as well.
I think if you add Ted Ginn, then you become a returning team. Mm-hmm. That's where yeah, we don't really like it. And then boom, it shows up. It's like, yeah, I don't really like going off-road, but then a Jeep shows up in your driveway. Like, okay, well, I'm going to go off-roading now because before the station wagon couldn't handle it, but now I have our Jeep Wrangler and we can do that.
I'm sorry. Your car analogy for Ted Ginn is a Jeep Wrangler. Tony, let me tell you about the time a Maserati gets dropped off and you're not going off-roading, but that's okay. You can go real fast. Ted Ginn 2 Tokyo Drift. I'm just saying, like, let's make that happen.
I mentioned the single high. If you give me Antoine Winfield as that nickel slot corner and Malik Hooker as that free safety, like, I feel pretty good about that secondary with those corners. And then I know Chase Young was such a huge part of that defense and made a lot of it work. I feel like you give me Malik Hooker and Antoine Winfield in that secondary, and I'll be okay with Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau creating some pass pressure and Mike Hall and Tyleek Williams. I'd feel pretty good about that. And of course, you got throwing CJ Hicks and Mitchell Melton as the jack, and feel pretty good about that pass pressure.
Yeah, and I think the other fun thing you can do with this is you just try and make a super unit where it's just like, okay, we'll figure it out on the offensive line, but we're going to have Nick Bosa and we're going to have Chase Young and we're going to have Dan Wilkinson on the defensive line together, and the quarterback's going to have 1.3 seconds in the pocket to throw the ball. So good luck. And, give me Orlando Pace and either, any two of those guys, and this is a national championship team. I mean, you could upgrade, you can upgrade a number of different spots. I think there are not very many places that I look and just didn't really even think about it. Like linebacker, it feels like, I mean, you can put Andy Katzenmoyer in there, but I don't know that Andy Katzenmoyer is, he's probably an upgrade from Tommy Eichenberg, but Tommy Eichenberg, it's at least a conversation, and that's not really anything you'd really seriously think about.
I did not think, I mean, I was with you. I don't think there's a need for linebackers, but seeing what like Malcolm Rodriguez did at Oklahoma State with 15 or 20 tackles for loss, and knowing how Jim Knowles would like to use his linebackers, what would Ryan Shazier do as a blitzing, just attacking linebacker? Because in 2011 he had 12. We had 23 and a half tackles for loss. As a starting linebacker, All-American. I think he could do some really good things. Now, of course, there would still be some people saying CJ Hicks should be starting in front of him. I understand that. But Ryan Shazier is like the real life version of what people think CJ Hicks will be. So that would be an interesting one. I do like the idea. I mean, even here, one off the board, like Devon Hamilton, the way he played as a fifth-year guy, very solid, very productive. If you can get that out of any of your defensive tackles this year, you would be thrilled. What about, Tom? I'll give you this one. Orlando Pace, and I'm just three guys on the offensive line. Orlando Pace, Charles Bentley, Tyson Walter.
It would be a hard hitting offensive line.
Litigious?
You had litigious, yes. Charles Bentley's actually, I had thought about Nick Mangold at center, but Charles Bentley's a good one at center too.
Yes, he is.
I think he's someone who's a little underappreciated because of the era in which he played, where he was those like late Cooper era teams, and he was gone by 2002, right? That was Nick Mangold's first year, right?
That was Stepanovic and Mangold in 2002.
Yeah. So, he's someone who kind of gets a little bit lost just because he was on Ohio State teams. First of all, Tony, can you imagine Ohio State teams losing 5 games in a season? Can you imagine what would happen if an Ohio State team lost 5 games in a season now? That was a thing that happened. They lost 6, 4, and 5, I believe, in a 3-year stretch between 1999 to 2001. I don't think that would go over great these days. I don't know that only one head coach would get fired if you had a stretch like that. You might go through two head coaches in a 3-year span like that. But yeah, it is. I think he's a very good one. And I'm just trying to think back to like the late, Jim Lachey. You could put Jim Lachey in, on as one of your tackles maybe. I was just trying to think through those 1980s teams, because again, it's like you kind of there were times when the teams were not fantastic, but you still had a Chris Carter. Wide receiver is one of those spots where I'm not really looking to upgrade.
Keith Byers as Mitch Rossi.
Keith Byers as Mitch Rossi might be that might be one of the most those late night highlight shows. He's on every touch he gets is one of those, because you put just a big old rumbling fullback there. I got to say, I watched the kick return he had for a touchdown against Pittsburgh in the Fiesta Bowl
just a couple of days ago. I saw it
just a couple of days ago. It scrolled through my Twitter feed, and I looked at it and I went, the speed of the game has improved over the last 40 years.
I'm watching that, and he's running upright the entire time. Like, he is straight up and down running. And this is a guy who rushed for 1,700 yards as a 1,700 yards as a junior or whatever at Ohio State, and then it never really worked out as a runner for the Eagles, but obviously one of the all-time great pass catchers out of the backfield. And I think he would fit right in. And also, some jet sweeps with him from the fullback, even though it's not really a jet sweep, it's just a sweep, I guess it would be called, from the backfield. So that's an interesting one, at least.
Yeah, he's I think he would be at least a very unique player in that offense. Would have won the Heisman Trophy if Miami knew how to defend a downfield pass. But yeah, it
without
was
interfering.
Yeah. If you didn't get that one, don't worry, the flag will come in a minute. It is, yeah, he would be an interesting one. I kind of like the kind of really the guys who don't exist anymore. Like you mentioned Nicky Sualua earlier, just a big old battering fullback. Because Mitch Rossi kind of filled the fullback role, but it wasn't the Nicky Sualua, Matt Calhoun, Jamar Martin. How about a Matt Keller? A Matt Keller who's, a fullback who's, basically Mitch Rossi, but he's going to catch 40 passes this year. That would be a very unique kind of player.
Shout out to Scotty Graham, also another very good fullback who could also be a tailback and was nearly 1,000-yard rusher. The Vikings one year, I believe. As I posted on the message board, the actual answer is Devin Smith and any other two people, because every time Devin Smith caught a touchdown as a Buckeye, the Ohio State won. So there's your answer. It could be whoever you want. Just throw the ball to Devin Smith and then profit.
If my memory serves correctly, Jaden Ballard has one career touchdown catch and has Ohio State won that game. So I think they may already have the spiritual successor to Devin Smith on the team, in that he has been comped just relentlessly to Devin Smith going back to high school, because he went to the same high school, basically ran the same routes, and wore the same number. So feels like that problem may have already been solved.
Here's a good one from DOS Buckeyes on the message board. Here are my three. Fans can say Justin Fields, but he's got Joe Burrow, Malcolm Jenkins, Orlando Pace, and that's what are you going to do with Malcolm Jenkins? Are you going to put him at corner? He's going to be the best corner on the team. He was fantastic at Ohio State, one of the best defensive players in Ohio State history, in my opinion. That's not bad. I like the Joe Burrow thing, even though I think it's kind of it's gratuitous. Honestly, let's be honest.
Hear me out here. Quinn Ewers. Who says no?
See?
No, the Burrow one's interesting because it's which Joe Burrow are you getting? And if you're getting 2019 Joe Burrow, sure, that's fine. I think that's a perfectly acceptable answer. Does he come with 2019 Joe Brady is the next question. But I think you give me 2019 Joe Burrow in a Ryan Day offense, and I'm still feeling pretty darn good about life. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Malcolm Jenkins, I think Malcolm Jenkins is a fine answer here. I do feel like I think Sean Springs is maybe getting a little overlooked if you're picking Malcolm Jenkins. I'm probably taking Sean Springs just straight up. And Malcolm Jenkins went, 9th in the draft, 10th in the draft to the Eagles, something like that. Sean Springs went 3rd overall. So that's you look back at the guys who were top 5 picks out of Ohio State over the years, and it's a lot of the guys we're talking about: Dan Wilkinson and Orlando Pace, John Springs, both of the Boasters I think were top 5 picks. I mean, you're talking about Chase Young. I mean, these are like the elite of the elite. Those I think are pretty good, solid choices. I don't think I'm going to tell you you're wrong on any of those.
I'm surprised that just scrolling through here, only the smartest people, and that's me, you, and a couple of others, went with Malik Hooker. It's a little surprising. I'm not going to throw any shade at anybody other than throwing it at everybody. And I've said this before, like, I believe Sean Springs is the best cornerback in Ohio State history, and I also think Antoine Winfield is probably the best defensive player in Ohio State history that I've ever seen. And to me, those opinions can coexist because Antoine Winfield was more than just a corner, but Sean Springs was the best pure cover corner that I've ever seen at Ohio State. And I think, Denzel Ward and Marshawn Lattimore's 2016 season, those guys have come close. But for me, Sean Springs is just, in terms of, this guy's not going to catch any passes unless I slip.
Tie goes to the receiver, as they say on the streets. That's your cue to wrap up the show.
I'm just going to pull the plug right now because everybody's just, well, that's enough of this show. Anyway, that will do it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed that discussion. Feel free to let us know in the comments or on the message board your own 3 that you would pick to put on this Ohio State team. You can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member, and you'll find that thread there with all of those discussions. And of course, you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. Go ahead and like this video. Hit the bell to be notified. Give it a thumbs up. We would appreciate that. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.